I did not want to be the one to do this. This is why it took me so long to make this video, because this chapter, Dragon Ball Super Chapter 88, what the hell is this? This, to me personally, coming out in the same week as something like Dragon Ball Deliverance, which I have a full review on in the description below in the top comment. Go ahead and check it out. Dragon Ball Deliverance has come out, and it came out with, in my opinion, a picture-perfect future Trunks. A Trunks that would be a believable future version of this kid, the kid that we saw yell at Majin Buu in Dragon Ball Z. And to have the official Dragon Ball Super manga come out with something like this that's mainly focused on Trunks and have it be what it is, to me, it took me a few days to kind of process it, because honestly, I didn't really want to compare the two, but it's almost impossible to do so. I won't be doing that here, but I will tell you guys what I thought about this chapter and if it is bussin' or disgusting. The beginning of Dragon Ball Super Chapter 88 is honestly not bad at all. We have these villains that are committing crimes. There are crimes on Earth, and we have a very similar situation as to the first introduction of the Golden Warrior, which ultimately ends up being Great Saiyaman. But in this instance, we have Goten and Trunks, who take the mantle over as the next superheroes in time as Saiyaman X1 and Saiyaman X2. First and foremost, I do think that this is a really cool character progression for these two characters. They're both in high school. They both are trying to do the hero thing. Even though Trunks rejected the costume, rejected the silliness of it and the goofiness of it, I actually really like this whole premise. I do like that they are fighting crime. It just all seems extremely believable to me, and it definitely fits what Dragon Ball Superhero was trying to do when it came to superhero culture on Earth. It definitely fits that mold. The hero costumes. The only positive that I can say on the hero costumes is that Trunks has a red scarf and looks very similar to Trunks in Dragon Ball GT. That is it. These gotta be some of the lamest costumes that I've seen in a while for a superhero, and My Hero Academia exists. These costumes, in my opinion, are just so below the par when it comes to superhero costumes, when what came before, the namesake of what name they share, Great Saiyaman, to me, doesn't have the best costume, but it is significantly better than these two. So I have not gotten into these costumes. I don't think that tights and underwear are something that make them look any better than the designs that they had before, especially when Trunks as a kid was joking on Gohan's design. To have this be what he comes up with is just downright silly. But after that, you have a little bit of world building here. It feels much more like a Western comic, because you're seeing these two heroes, you're seeing them go through their process, you're seeing them go through their home life, you're seeing them go through the fact that they are really kind of combating what their parents would want from them, because you know that the Bree family, they would want Trunks not to be a hero, not to be a fighter, but to take the company over. They even mentioned that at one point. And you have Goten here, who Chi-Chi won't let, even out of her sight, let alone be doing something along these lines. So it makes sense. Everything honestly is pretty good at this point. It feels really solid, a really solid chapter. So the main problem in this superhero story, and not the problem that I have with it, but the issue that the heroes have, is that the robots from the Capsule Corporation are malfunctioning, basically being controlled by other people. And there are these helper robots that I guess they mass produce for the populace. I'm not sure if it's just for the city or for Earth, whatever the case is. And so they're having these issues with it. So this actually leads us to the problem that I have personally with this chapter, and a problem that I've had with a certain specific character, and that is Mai. Mai is really cool. Mai, I am assuming, is going to go to school at some point, because that's how it looked like in the cover. And to me, Mai on her own isn't so bad, but her connection with Trunks is what is an issue here, and it is just downright weird. It is a weird connection that they have that they never really, honestly, in my opinion, they never should have fully fleshed. It would make sense, in my opinion, in a certain sense, depending on what time they got together, that Trunks and Mai in the future world, they are, basically a couple, because you don't know when Mai was turned into a younger person and then decided to, it could have been different. That's what I'm saying. She could have met him much later down the line. But in this universe, Mai met him when she was a kid. And when he was a kid, she got wished from being like a 60-year-old lady to a kid. But the problem is, the difference is that she didn't just get wished to be a child, just like Pilaf and the dog. They got wished to be smaller, but they still have their same mindset, tendencies, and it seems like their mental age is still the same as when they were adults. So essentially you have here, like in isekai, you have a childlike body with an adult maneuvering everything. And so this, on top of the crush that Trunks has and the obvious, him trying to get her attention, those two things to me don't really mesh really well, especially this panel right here when you have Bulma kind of like understanding that Trunks is trying to impress Mai or trying to ask her out, whatever the case is, and Bulma's kind of like smiling because she knows that Trunks has a crush on Mai. This should be a huge red flag, seeing as how Mai was older than Bulma at the time and is mentally older than Bulma, in my opinion. So maybe I'm taking this a little bit too strongly, but at the same time, it just kind of felt kind of weird for me, and I don't like that it's an aspect as well. A little side note, I don't like that Trunks would be willing to sacrifice Dragon Balls to take bribes from an obvious evildoer. I think that, at that point, he's not really being a hero for the people. He's being a hero because he wants fame and glory. He's got a lot of Vegeta in himself that way. Trunks having issues in school, finding out about haunted spots, and having black representation in Dragon Ball actually be appropriate and cool and not like it used to be under Toriyama back in the 90s and the 80s. This all is awesome stuff. I love it. I think that this is the sweet spot for a comic, a manga that is imitating comics for a superhero team that's in high school. It feels very much like Yu Yu Hakusho at this point, where there's ghosts or there's monsters running around. It's kind of spooky. They're trying to emulate this video game character. It all really fits very well. But here's where we get to my major issue with this chapter, and that is the regression of Trunks. As I said before, you see Trunks in something like Dragon Ball Deliverance that came out the exact same week as this. There's a fair comparison to be made here, an open discussion to be had, that these two characters came at the same time, but only one of them feels like the Trunks that we used to have in Dragon Ball Z, because having Trunks have this quirk where he is deathly afraid of monsters and ghosts and spooky things, to me, yes, people can be having silly, fears or whatever. Like Goku has a silly fear of needles, even though he's super strong. But at the same time, not once in Trunks' past has been shown that he could have this fear of monsters. When he was a kid, he downright yelled at Majin Buu, the biggest monster on the planet. He faced Majin Buu. He did not care. He had a strong, extremely strong relationship when it came to monsters and being brave against them. Having fear of these things is, to me, a regression of his character. And you can say this is a slice of life. This is just, a goofy type of chapter, whatever the case is. Yeah, I don't mind those, but they don't show it that way. There's a lot of lore here as to what's going on Earth and how we get to Dragon Ball Superhero, which, if you don't remember, Superhero for the most part is a slice of life. For the most part, it is a huge slice of life, but they did the opposite. They took someone who barely got any focus, which is Piccolo, at least not lately, and he was not regressed. He was progressed. He had dialogue. He had lore. He had feelings. He had thoughts and strategies. He had conversations with characters he normally wouldn't have, like Bulma. Even though it was kind of goofy at times and it was a slice of life, he fully had progression. But in this chapter, they regressed Trunks a lot and made Goten be the brave one, which I understand that aspect because, Goten is still having those qualities as he did as a kid, but they try to differentiate the two in this mission, and having one be a scaredy cat and be a wuss because you want one to focus on being brave is coming to the detriment of one character. To me, it's not fair. It doesn't sit well with me. So next comes where he meets the basic zombies, the monsters that Dr. Hedo was creating in Dragon Ball Superhero. Goten and Trunks end up breaking up their diabolical plan, which is basically just to have the helper robots help them make prepackaged sushi that has a business plan behind it. I don't really know. And then that's when you see Goten's classmates and Trunks' classmates. They're there. They are also investigating and they get caught. So Trunks has to jump into action. He transforms as a superhero, and at this point he is not scared of the zombies. He is not scared of the monsters, which to me that also shows why they put that in there, that he was scared in his normal clothes, because they're trying to differentiate him with the hero self, which I feel like they really didn't need to have to do. But here is where we get something cool, which I originally had thought this is kind of lame, but at the same time now it makes a lot more sense from what they're trying to set up, because one of the monsters, one of the creatures, he takes a full-on punch from a Trunks. He's in base form, he's in a superhero form, but he's still base form Trunks, and he doesn't flinch, meaning that not that Trunks got weak. It means that they're trying to set up the fact that Dr. Hedo can create monsters that are on the same level as the superhero. So to me, that's almost like on that same level. That's great showcasing as to Dr. Hedo's abilities, and it makes it believable to me down the line when he does eventually create Cell Max, or he does eventually create the Gammas. It makes it believable that these creatures, these monsters, these androids can face off against the Z fighters, or at least some of the weaker ones, or in their lesser forms. This is the part that I really liked in this chapter, and that is when his watch fails him. He turns back into regular Trunks, leaving Goten no choice but to save his secret identity by turning out the lights, teleporting the classmates out of there, and for Trunks to be seen by this monster, he transforms into a Super Saiyan, and then he uses his Super Saiyan power, which is more than enough to take this guy out in his hero form. To me, this part of the chapter was really cool, really interesting. I love the references to Golden Warrior from the Dragon Ball Z Saiyaman arc. Definitely really cool nostalgia. Before Goten and Trunks leave, they end up grabbing this disc of Dr. Gero's research, which honestly could be the blueprint to create maybe some higher form android or Cell Max, something along those lines, and Trunks ends up taking it so we can see what it has in the future. Dr. Hedo comes back, it's gone. He says there's only one like it in the world, and they know what school they're going to go to, so more than likely by the end of this, Dr. Hedo will have an army of zombies or creatures to attack the school or try to find out who took the disc. That's obviously what they're picking up, although I don't know how that leads to Cell Max or the androids like Gamma 1 or Gamma 2, unless this is just a prequel, and then we're going to get the Dragon Ball Super Superhero manga itself, which is going to be a little bit different than this. Chapter ends with my Cant still go on a date with Trunks, because now she's got more work to do fixing the robots they found in the factory, or Krillin, I'm assuming, brought back from the factory, because he was out there scoping around for, you know, children that were where they're not supposed to be. Ultimately, this prequel, first chapter of this Dragon Ball Super prequel manga, to me personally, it is a mixed bag. There's some cool moments in here, some nostalgic ones. I like the setup that they're trying to have here ultimately with Hedo and Trunks and Goten, but ultimately them bringing back and regressing certain characters to me makes this slightly above average, so probably like around 6 as the chapter goes. But let's see what the next one comes out with, because I am ready for it, and see exactly where this story is going to go, because to me, I have no fucking clue. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. This is going to be BlackScape signing off. Take care, guys.